When you think about the fall of Rome, what comes to mind? Barbarian hordes storming the gates? Gladiators in the Colosseum? Maybe a decadent emperor being poisoned in a marble palace? Those are the classic images, but they only tell half the story. Empires don't just crumble from external attacks. The real rot often starts from within. And for Rome, one of the most powerful forces of its decay wasn't a sword, but a coin. That's right. The Roman Empire didn't just fall because of invasions or political corruption. It fell because its money became worthless. And the story of how that happened is a chilling lesson for every single one of us today, living in economies that also rely on trust in our currency. Let's travel back in time. Our story begins with a small silver coin, the denarius. Introduced around 211 BCE, this coin was the backbone of the Roman economy for centuries. It was nearly pure silver, and its value was trusted from the dusty plains of Syria to the misty shores of Britain. Roman legionaries were paid in denarii, merchants demanded them for their finest goods, and everyday citizens saved them as a store of wealth. The denarius wasn't just money. It was a symbol of Roman power and reliability. The strength of the empire and the value of its coin were one and the same. But running an empire is an expensive business. You have massive armies to pay, thousands of miles of roads and aqueducts to build and maintain, and constant wars to finance. By the 2nd century CE, Rome was stretched thin. It was fighting Germanic tribes on the Rhine and Danube, the powerful Parthian Empire in the east, and dealing with rebellions at home. The tax money coming in just wasn't enough to cover the staggering military expenses. So, the emperors turned to a trick that governments have used throughout history. They started messing with the money. They began debasing the currency. What does that mean? They started mixing cheaper metals, like copper, into their silver coins while keeping the face value the same. They could take a pound of silver that once made, say, 100 coins, and now mint 150 or 200 coins from it. It was a stealth tax, a way to create money out of thin air to pay the bills. The numbers are shocking. Under the first emperor, Augustus, a denarius was about 95% pure silver. It was a coin you could trust. But fast forward to the early 3rd century, under the emperor Caracalla, the silver content had plummeted to about 50%. A half-century later, under Gallienus, it was a disaster. The denarius contained less than 5% silver. It was basically a bronze coin with a thin, cheap silver wash that would rub off in your hand. People weren't stupid. They could see it, feel it, and hear it. The new coins were lighter and didn't have the same ring. They knew they were being cheated. And what happens when people lose faith in their money? Inflation. Massive runaway inflation. Imagine going to the market. A loaf of bread that cost 1 denarius a few years ago might now cost 10, then 20, then 50. Your life savings, carefully stored in a pot buried in your garden, were becoming worthless. Soldiers who were paid a fixed number of denarii saw their wages evaporate. They demanded more and more pay, which only forced the emperors to debase the currency even further to meet their demands. It was a death spiral. Merchants started refusing to accept the worthless coins. Why would they trade valuable goods like grain or olive oil for a piece of bronze masquerading as silver? They began to prefer bartering, trading goods directly for other goods, or demanding payment in gold, which was much harder to debase. Local trade ground to a halt. The intricate economic network that held the empire together began to fray. This economic chaos kicked off one of the darkest periods in Roman history, the crisis of the 3rd century. For 50 years, from 235 to 284 CE, the empire was in a state of near constant collapse. There were endless civil wars, with generals being declared emperor by their armies, only to be assassinated a few months later. Plagues swept through the population, and barbarian tribes took advantage of the chaos to raid deep into Roman territory. Desperate emperors tried everything to fix the problem. They issued price controls, a classic move. In 301 CE, the Emperor Diocletian issued his famous Edict on Maximum Prices, attempting to set fixed legal prices for over 1,000 goods and services, from wheat to haircuts to lions for the arena. The penalty for overcharging? Death. And what happened? It failed spectacularly. The official markets just emptied out. Why would a farmer sell his grain at a loss? All trade moved to the black market where goods were sold illegally at much higher prices. The government's attempt to control the economy had only broken it further. The denarius was dead. Eventually the empire had to reboot its currency system. The Emperor Constantine introduced a new gold coin, the solidus, which was of a consistent high purity. This coin became the foundation of the Byzantine Empire's economy in the East and lasted for centuries. But for the Western Roman Empire it was too little, too late. The damage was done. The decades of debasement had hollowed out the economy from the inside. The government could no longer afford to pay its massive army with sound money, leading to military decline. The complex trade networks that supplied the cities had fractured, leading to widespread shortages, and most importantly, the trust that bound Roman society together. Trust in the government, trust in the economy, trust in the future had vanished. When the so-called barbarians finally pushed over the weakened structure in the 5th century, they were simply kicking down a rotten door. So what's the lesson for us? It's a timeless one. A society is only as strong as the trust in its institutions, and currency is a powerful form of that trust. Governments might think they can print or inflate their way out of problems, but history shows us that there are always consequences. The bill always comes due, and it's the ordinary people who end up paying the price. The story of the denarius echoes through the centuries. We saw it in Weimar Germany in the 1920s with its catastrophic hyperinflation. We've seen it in modern Zimbabwe and Venezuela. It is a reminder that real wealth isn't just a number on a screen or a piece of paper. It's land, it's skills, it's tangible assets. The illusion of wealth created by manipulating money is the most dangerous trap of all. Because as the Romans learned the hard way, trust, once lost, is incredibly difficult to get back. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into history interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about how the past shapes our present. See you in the next video.